Billionaire wanted a divorce, never expected that the savior he had been searching for was his wife. In the glittering world of high society, few names spark envy and admiration like Henry Blackwell, a self-made billionaire, business tycoon, and a man notorious for achieving everything he sets his sights on. But behind the facade of endless success and glossy magazine covers, Henry's seemingly perfect life is on the brink of collapse. He wants out of a marriage everyone once deemed a fairy tale. Little does he know, the very woman he's preparing to leave holds the key to the salvation he's desperately seeking. Brace yourself for intrigue, heartbreak, and redemption in this riveting story of unexpected love and unforeseen destiny. Henry Blackwell was known for his empire, Blackwell Innovations, headquartered in the heart of Manhattan. Ever since he was a teenager, he'd had a natural knack for business. He went from selling second-hand electronics in his parents' garage in upstate New York to hosting board meetings in glass-walled skyscrapers overlooking Central Park. That unstoppable drive had earned him every material comfort imaginable: luxury cars, yachts, private jets, and a social network filled with powerful figures like Bill Gates, who once joined him for a luncheon to discuss philanthropic endeavors. He was used to accolades and the dizzying pace of success. His fame brought him a curated circle of friends, some genuine, some opportunistic, and a relentless public eye. All that sparkle left little time for introspection or emotional connections. Yet 8 years ago, he had married Catherine Dumont, a classic beauty from a respected Bostonian family. Her father, the late Francis Dumont, had been a major investor in Henry's earliest ventures. Francis believed in Henry's vision, seeing in him the potential to revolutionize the tech world. In return, Henry had repaid the investment 1,000-fold. Eventually, business dinners between the Blackwells and Dumonts morphed into quiet evenings where Henry and Catherine bonded over a shared love for literature and fine art. In public, Henry's marriage seemed perfect, two wealthy families merging, creating a powerful alliance. Reporters never passed up the opportunity to photograph them entering galas or stepping off private planes. There were countless charitable events where Catherine stood by Henry's side, her gentle demeanor the perfect complement to his unstoppable energy. The tabloids loved writing about them, using phrases like power couple and match made in billionaire heaven. But behind the polished front, something was off. Catherine's sweet, hopeful nature contrasted starkly with the ruthless pace of Henry's corporate life. Over time, Henry began seeing Catherine more as a decorative figure, someone who accompanied him on grand occasions, rather than a partner with opinions and ideas of her own. For her part, Catherine felt increasingly sidelined, unsure of her role in Henry's vast empire or in his personal life. Her intelligence and creativity went largely unnoticed in Henry's boardroom and in their home. Tension built gradually. At first it was small, Henry forgetting their anniversary because he was stuck in negotiations in Tokyo, or Catherine staying home to nurse a cold alone while Henry attended a dinner with foreign investors. Each time there'd be an apology, maybe a gift, but no real resolution. Catherine adapted to being the supportive spouse, hoping that eventually Henry would see her for who she truly was, someone with her own gifts and aspirations. The separation between them was never more visible than during the final months before Henry announced his desire for a divorce. He stopped seeking her opinion entirely. She, on the other hand, threw herself into philanthropic projects, particularly supporting women's education in underprivileged areas. She partnered with real institutions like the Malala Fund and local organizations in places like Detroit and the Bronx. If Henry ever asked about her work, it was merely polite interest, never a deep conversation. The last straw for Catherine was an argument over a charitable foundation she wanted to establish in her late father's name. Henry refused to back it, dismissing it as a non-viable business move in a phone call, even though it meant the world to her. In that moment, she realized how wide the chasm had grown between them, but Catherine still believed in some hidden part of Henry, the caring person she had seen glimpses of before. That was the man she had fallen in love with, the one who wrote heartfelt notes on her birthday and surprised her with small tokens of affection. However, Henry was convinced the marriage had no future. In his mind, they were too different. In a move that was as clinical as any business decision, he quietly arranged a meeting with his lawyers, determined to end their marriage with minimal fuss. He told no one except his oldest friend, Mark Hutchinson, who served as the CFO of Blackwell Innovations and had witnessed Henry's transformation from scrappy entrepreneur to relentless mogul. Mark voiced concern, suggesting Henry speak to Catherine more directly, but Henry insisted it was too late. Little did Henry know that the meticulously planned exit strategy would trigger a chain of events that would unravel everything he thought he knew about business, about love, and about his own wife. A brisk December wind whipped through midtown Manhattan the day Henry entered the law offices of Edward Saltz to finalize the drafting of his divorce papers. It was a stark contrast to the warmth of the plush, mahogany-paneled conference room where Henry met with Winston Saltz, the family lawyer who had long represented the Blackwells. Winston was an imposing figure in the legal world, known for being shrewd in high-stakes negotiations. He wore his trademark charcoal suit and offered Henry a confident handshake. "So," Winston began, flipping open a thick folder, "I take it you're sure about this decision?" Henry inhaled, glancing at the gilded, sweeping view of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Yes," he said, though his voice lacked the steely conviction he was known for in the business realm. "We've grown apart. Catherine, she's not the same woman I married." Winston nodded solemnly, but behind his calm facade was a flicker of concern. He'd handled numerous divorces, especially among the wealthy, and while many were amicable, some turned into PR and legal nightmares. "You understand, this might attract significant media attention." Henry waved away the concern. "I'm prepared for it. We'll keep it out of the spotlight as much as possible. Catherine and I can settle things swiftly." Winston laid out the steps. Given Henry's net worth and the intricacy of his businesses, a divorce settlement would be extensive. But Henry had always prided himself on organization. His personal holdings and Catherine's assets were clearly demarcated. They had a prenuptial agreement that ensured Catherine would be well taken care of, financially speaking. Winston assured him, "We'll do our best to contain this, but it's wise to prepare for some level of public scrutiny." The meeting ended with Henry instructing Winston to have the documents ready for his signature within a week. As he stepped out into the cold air, Henry felt empty. There was no wave of relief, no sense of freedom. Instead, a quiet sense of foreboding took root in his chest. Back at Blackwell Innovations, he headed straight to his private elevator, avoiding small talk. The entire 50th floor was his domain, glass-walled offices, a lavishly decorated lobby, and meeting rooms equipped with the latest tech. He retreated to his corner office, noticing a pile of mail on his desk. At the top of the stack sat an envelope with thick parchment. The handwriting looked suspiciously familiar. He tore it open to find an invitation. "Henry, I've taken the liberty of planning a small gathering at the Dumont estate next weekend. It's been a while since we had a family event in honor of my father's memory. Please let me know if you can make it. I'd appreciate your presence more than you know. Catherine." He read the words multiple times, the slight tremor in her usually steady handwriting catching his attention. The Dumont estate she referred to was her family's ancestral mansion in Boston. Scenes of elaborate holiday dinners and warm summer nights spent on the veranda filled his mind. They had once enjoyed hosting guests there, political figures, celebrities, close friends. Now, the memory felt like a relic from another life. Henry wasn't sure what to do. If he showed up, it would mean facing Catherine before delivering the legal bombshell of divorce papers. But ignoring the invitation would be cold, and Henry didn't want to sabotage the possibility of ending things amicably. He dialed Mark Hutchinson's extension. Mark picked up after a single ring. "Henry, everything okay?" Henry told him about Catherine's invitation. "I need your advice. Do I go or not?" Mark paused. "I think you should. You're trying to keep this civil, right? Talk to her. Maybe there's a more humane way than just dropping papers in her lap. The conversation ended with Henry agreeing. Despite his reservations, some part of him felt compelled to see Catherine in her own space. Maybe to see if the woman he once fell for, the Dumont estate in Boston, was a quintessential example of New England aristocracy. Nestled behind tall iron gates, the property boasted landscaped gardens, a historic mansion with ivy-covered walls, and a wide veranda that overlooked a serene lake. Henry arrived late on Friday afternoon, stepping out of his chauffeured car onto the gravel driveway. A chilly breeze rustled the bare branches of the ancient oaks that lined the path. At the entrance, Catherine's longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Barrett, greeted Henry with a subdued smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Blackwell. Mrs. Catherine is expecting you in the study." Henry thanked her and made his way through the foyer, where portraits of Dumont ancestors gazed down from gilded frames. He hadn't realized how much time had passed since his last visit. Everything felt strangely familiar, yet different, as though a layer of dust had settled over once vibrant memories. He found Catherine in the study, leaning over a thick ledger. She looked up when he entered, a cautious smile curving her lips. She wore a simple yet elegant ivory sweater dress that made her appear more delicate than he remembered. "Henry," she greeted quietly, closing the ledger. "I'm glad you came." Henry nodded, trying to dispel the awkwardness. "Thanks for inviting me. Got your note? I came as soon as I could." She gestured to a pair of armchairs by the fireplace, where a gentle fire crackled. "Have a seat. I wanted to talk to you about some things before the gathering tomorrow." They settled into the chairs. Catherine clasped her hands in her lap, seemingly collecting her thoughts. "It's been a tough year, Henry. With my father gone, the estate's been in disarray. I've been overseeing the staff and dealing with the trust he left behind." Henry nodded, remembering Francis Dumont as a formidable businessman and a stern father. "I'm sorry. I know how much he meant to you. How can I help?" Catherine looked momentarily surprised by his offer. "Well, for starters, I'd like your support at the memorial dinner tomorrow. Several of my father's closest friends and associates will be here. They'd like to hear how the foundation is progressing, and you know it would mean a lot to them if you spoke about your partnership with Dad." "Of course," Henry replied, though privately he felt conflicted. He would be giving a speech on the man whose daughter he was preparing to divorce. Catherine exhaled, relieved. "Thank you." She paused, gaze drifting to the flickering flames. "I know we've grown apart. I'm not naive, but tomorrow is not just about me. It's about my father's legacy. We both owe him so much." Henry nodded. "I understand." A silence enveloped them, filled with the weight of unspoken thoughts. For a moment, Henry considered telling her about the divorce papers. He opened his mouth, words on the tip of his tongue, but something held him back. Maybe it was the sorrow etched on her face, or the fact that she was trusting him to help memorialize her father. He decided to wait, to allow her this one last tribute before shattering her world. Catherine broke the silence. "I've arranged for your room to be prepared. You must be tired after the drive. Let me show you upstairs." She led him through the hallways, passing by rooms filled with family heirlooms, antique vases, rare books, and photographs chronicling generations of Dumonts. Catherine stopped at a familiar door, the same suite they used to share during their newlywed visits. The memory struck Henry hard. He remembered nights spent whispering dreams to each other, planning trips around the globe, imagining a life unburdened by corporate demands. He cleared his throat. "This room, are you sure you want me here?" She nodded, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "I had Mrs. Barrett air it out and change the linens this morning. I thought it would be comfortable for you." Then she turned to leave, pausing to add softly, "Let's do our best to honor Dad's memory tomorrow. Thank you for coming, Henry." As the door clicked shut behind her, Henry sank onto the edge of the bed. Everything in the estate reminded him of how different things had been at the start of their relationship. Back then, Catherine had challenged him, made him laugh, and even offered brilliant ideas he incorporated into his early business models. Had he really lost sight of all that? Shaking off the memories, Henry decided to freshen up and rest. Tomorrow was the memorial dinner, a final performance he would give before the truth about their marriage came to light. But even as he began to steel himself for what lay ahead, he couldn't ignore a growing knot of guilt in his stomach, a small voice that whispered, maybe, just maybe, he was making the wrong decision. Morning arrived quietly, with a pale light illuminating the Dumont estate's sprawling grounds. Henry awoke to the sound of distant birdsong. He dressed in a tailored suit, meticulously checking his appearance in the mirror, as if the right tie knot or polished shoes could fortify him for the emotional day ahead. Downstairs, Catherine had orchestrated everything perfectly. The staff moved in a calm, well-rehearsed dance, setting out white linens and gold-rimmed china in the formal dining room. Vases brimming with white roses, Francis Dumont's favorite flower, adorned the tables. Catherine herself looked poised, though a slight tightness in her smile betrayed underlying tension. Guests began arriving around noon. Family friends, former business associates of Francis, local politicians. Henry recognized many faces, all of whom greeted him with respectful handshakes and gentle condolences. It felt like stepping back in time, an echo of the countless events they used to host here. As the memorial commenced, Catherine stood at the head of the grand table, her voice steady yet emotional as she spoke of her father's legacy. She recalled childhood memories, Francis teaching her how to fish, his unwavering encouragement of her ambitions, and his pride in Henry's entrepreneurial successes. When she gestured for Henry to speak, the room hushed. Stepping forward, Henry cleared his throat, heart pounding despite his long history of public speaking. Francis Dumont was more than a father-in-law. He was a mentor, an early believer in my visions. His guidance shaped not just my business, but my understanding of loyalty and trust. He taught me that a true partnership, whether in business or in marriage, requires respect and understanding. He paused, locking eyes with Catherine momentarily. We owe it to him to carry on his values. I promise to support Catherine and the Dumont Foundation in whatever way I can. His memory deserves nothing less. A soft wave of applause followed his words. Catherine smiled, truly smiled. For a fleeting moment, Henry felt a rush of warmth, a mix of pride and regret swirling inside him. He had intended to deliver a straightforward eulogy, but something deeper escaped his lips, something that hinted he was more connected to Catherine than he let himself believe. After the formal toasts, Henry found himself cornered by an elderly acquaintance, Mr. Robert Whitfield, a retired banker who had partnered with Francis decades ago. Mr. Whitfield's voice trembled with age. You know, Henry, Francis always told me you had a rare sense of commitment. He believed you'd make Catherine very happy. Henry forced a polite smile, guilt slicing through him. He was a good man. I hope I can continue to make him proud. Whitfield patted Henry's shoulder. Good lad. Keep the faith, son. The gathering gradually transitioned to a more casual affair, with people milling about, sharing stories. Catherine excused herself to check on some estate matters. Henry took the opportunity to slip outside, seeking a moment of solitude. Strolling across the manicured lawn, he eventually reached a secluded bench near the lake. He sat down, gazing at the water's still surface. Memories assailed him, laughter shared with Catherine under summer skies, stolen kisses amid the rose garden, and late-night talks about the future. He'd allowed his ambition to overshadow those tender moments, burying them beneath corporate deals and global expansions. His phone vibrated, breaking his reverie. It was Mark Hutchinson. "Henry," Mark said, urgency in his voice. "We've got a problem at Blackwell Innovations." Henry's pulse spiked. "What kind of problem?" "There's a security breach in the main servers. Some new algorithm you authorized, Project Griffin, appears compromised. We might be looking at a major leak if we don't act fast." Henry's stomach dropped. Project Griffin was supposed to be his next big success, a revolutionary software platform to integrate AI with supply chain optimization. Did you lock down the server? We're trying, but we need your clearance. This is serious, Henry. We have to consider halting the entire project until we know what's going on. I'm worried about sabotage. Images of scandalous headlines and plummeting stock prices flashed through Henry's mind. He had neglected to focus on Project Griffin in recent weeks, too preoccupied with personal matters. I'll deal with it, he said, standing up. I'll head back as soon as I can. He ended the call, frustration and panic mingling within him. Another crisis, another potential meltdown. But as he turned to head back to the mansion, he spotted Catherine emerging from the house, her delicate features marred by concern. She approached, noticing his anxious expression. Is everything all right, Henry? She asked softly. He hesitated. His instinct was to handle business matters alone, to push Catherine aside as he always did. But he recalled something Francis had once told him. Catherine is as sharp as they come. Don't underestimate her. With a sigh, Henry decided to share the bare truth. There's a problem at my company, a critical security breach. It's complicated, but I may need to leave soon. Catherine's face fell, but she nodded. I understand. Do what you have to do. Then she surprised him by placing a hand gently on his arm. If you need any help, contacts, resources, let me know. My father's connections in the cybersecurity sector might prove useful. He always said that the best help is often closer than we think. He studied her features, taken aback by her willingness to assist. In that moment, Henry was struck by the realization that Catherine was not just a figurehead. She was intelligent, resourceful, and compassionate, exactly the kind of person who could help navigate a crisis. As the guests began to disperse, Henry made a swift exit, mind whirling with conflicting thoughts. He had come here ready to bury the final remnants of their relationship. Yet Catherine had just extended a lifeline in his darkest hour, reminding him that maybe, just maybe, he'd been looking for solutions in the wrong places all along. Henry arrived back in Manhattan that same night, going straight from his chauffeured car to the penthouse. He dropped off his suitcase and headed for the Blackwell Innovations headquarters, which bustled with frantic activity despite the late hour. Mark Hutchinson was waiting in the executive conference room, his laptop displaying lines of security logs. We've contained the breach temporarily, Mark explained, but we're not sure how deep it goes. Our team found lines of malicious code inside Project Griffin's mainframe. Henry's jaw clenched. Could it be an inside job? Mark sighed. Possibly. The infiltration was too precise. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike. Henry slumped into a chair, raking a hand through his hair. Project Griffin was his brainchild, a potentially revolutionary platform that could cement Blackwell Innovations as the global leader in AI-driven logistics. Losing control of it would be catastrophic, not just in terms of finances, but also reputation. They spent the next hours in tense discussion with the company's top cybersecurity experts. One name kept surfacing: Dominion Analytics, a rival firm that had previously tried to poach some of Blackwell's best engineers. Rumor had it that Dominion's CEO, Gavin Rourke, was determined to dethrone Henry. Amid the clamor of phone calls and frantic keyboard typing, Henry found himself thinking about Catherine. Her calm composure at the Dumont estate contrasted sharply with this storm of crisis. He remembered her offer of help, the sincerity in her eyes. Part of him wanted to call her, to hear her voice, to ask for guidance. Yet his pride flared up, reminding him that he was Henry Blackwell, the unstoppable mogul who never needed anyone's help. By dawn, the team was exhausted. Mark insisted Henry get a couple of hours' sleep. We'll reconvene at noon. Try to rest. Henry returned to his penthouse, collapsing onto the bed without even removing his shoes. He drifted into a restless slumber filled with fragmented dreams. Catherine's sad smile, Francis Dumont's cautionary words, lines of corrupted code, and swirling headlines about corporate sabotage. When Henry woke, it was nearly midday. He felt no more refreshed than before. Bleary-eyed, he checked his phone. There were numerous missed calls and messages, from Mark, from board members, even from Winston Saltz's office, but one text stood out. "Catherine, hey, how are things going? If you need any contacts from Dad's cybersecurity circle, I can forward you some names. Let me know." Henry hesitated, torn between ignoring her message and responding. Finally, he typed, "Henry, it's complicated. We suspect Dominion Analytics is behind the breach. If you have any leads, I'd appreciate it." Almost immediately, her reply arrived. "Catherine, I'll make some calls and send you what I find. Simple, direct, yet supportive." Henry felt a pang of guilt. Here he was, leaning on her in a crisis, while still planning to hand her divorce papers. The hypocrisy stung him. That afternoon, Henry reconvened with Mark and the team. They strategized a plan to isolate Project Griffin from the main network to limit further data leakage. While the engineers discussed technical solutions, Mark pulled Henry aside. "Word on the street is that Dominion has been courting our top coder, Leslie Eng. If Leslie jumps ship, we might lose the core architecture of Griffin," Mark warned. Henry pinched the bridge of his nose, stress piling on. Leslie is under a strict non-compete. But if Dominion is behind the sabotage, they might have blackmailed or bribed her. We can't let her leave. Determined, Henry decided on a direct approach. He summoned Leslie Ung for a private meeting in his office. Leslie was a brilliant software architect, a quiet woman in her late 20s with a slight stoop to her shoulders from long hours at the computer. She entered timidly, her eyes flicking nervously around the opulent space. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Blackwell?" she asked, fiddling with the hem of her sweater. Henry motioned for her to sit. "Leslie, I've heard a rumor that Dominion Analytics is trying to recruit you. I need your honest answer." Leslie's cheeks colored. "They reached out. I told them I'm not interested. My loyalty is here." Henry studied her. "But the sabotage in Project Griffin, do you have any idea how that might have happened?" She shook her head vigorously, face pale. "I swear I would never jeopardize the project. My code was reviewed regularly. Her eyes began to fill with tears. "I know how important Griffin is. I'd never betray the team." Something in her demeanor rang true to Henry. She didn't look like someone who would orchestrate a malicious hack. He exhaled, softening. "All right, Leslie, I believe you. But please, if you have any suspicions about who might be involved, come to me directly. I don't want to lose you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell." After she left, Henry felt a measure of relief. He trusted Leslie's integrity, but if she wasn't the saboteur, who could it be? That evening, Catherine's promised leads arrived via email, a list of several top cybersecurity consultants that her father had once worked with. Henry recognized some of the names as highly regarded in the field, the kind of people who could dig deeper into the infiltration. He forwarded the details to Mark, attaching a note. "Let's bring 1 or 2 of these experts in ASAP." A few days ago, Henry wouldn't have admitted how badly he needed help. Now he found himself relying on Catherine's network, a testament to her father's wide reach and her own willingness to step up. Despite all the tension between them, Catherine was proving to be an ally. As midnight approached, Henry finally left the office. Outside, the city streets glowed with the pulse of neon signs and headlights cutting through the dark. He headed to his penthouse, stepping off the elevator to a silent hallway. Inside the apartment, he noticed a small bag by the door, Catherine's overnight bag. Confused, he walked into the living room to find Catherine herself, curled up on the sofa, engrossed in reading a thick file. She looked up when he entered, and their eyes locked in a silent exchange of surprise and relief. "Catherine," he began softly, setting down his briefcase. "You're here?" She set the file aside, the quiet confidence of her gaze meeting his. "I am. I thought you might need some support." For the first time in a long while, Henry felt something stir within him. an emotion bordering on gratitude, even affection. He had no words, only a faint nod. As the chaos of corporate sabotage swirled around him, Catherine was there, offering not just resources, but a gentle reminder that he wasn't alone. Catherine's sudden presence in the penthouse jolted Henry's carefully guarded composure. For years they had lived separate lives under the same roof, like strangers passing each other in a museum. Now, with his world spiraling, she was the one choosing to stand by him. They sat across from each other in the living room, Henry still dressed in his crisp suit, Catherine in a casual sweater and jeans that somehow made her look both elegant and comforting. A tension buzzed in the air, a mixture of unresolved feelings and the high stakes of the crisis. Catherine broke the silence. "I know this is a difficult time, and I'm sorry. I don't want to add more pressure, but I thought it might help if we put our heads together." Henry managed a half-smile. "You've helped already. Those cybersecurity leads you sent. Mark is reaching out to them. Thank you." She nodded. "Good. I also brought some documents," she said, picking up the thick file on the coffee table. "Notes Dad made about potential threats to your company. Apparently, he was investigating Dominion Analytics for unethical practices before he passed away." Henry's eyebrows shot up. "I didn't know that. Francis never mentioned it to me." "He was protective. He didn't want to worry you unless he had solid proof," Catherine explained. She slid the file toward Henry. "I only found these notes recently while going through his study. Dominion Analytics has some shady connections, shell companies, overseas accounts. Dad suspected they might target Blackwell Innovations." Henry took a moment to absorb her words. Francis had been a stern figure, but always forward-thinking. It made sense he'd be cautious on Henry's behalf. "Thank you for this," Henry murmured, leafing through the pages. "It might give us a lead." Catherine leaned back, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Henry, if Dominion is as ruthless as Dad suspected, this could be bigger than a simple security breach. They could be trying to sink your company or take it over." He swallowed. "I won't let that happen." They fell into silence again. Henry found himself studying Catherine, her eyes, the set of her jaw, the quiet strength in her posture. It suddenly struck him how much he'd taken her for granted, and how close he was to losing her forever. "Catherine," he said softly, voice trembling despite himself. There's something I need to tell you." She looked up, a flicker of anxiety passing through her eyes. "What is it?" The words hovered on his lips. "I filed for divorce." But somehow he couldn't bring himself to say it. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken confession. He could see the flicker of doubt, the question forming on her face. The phone rang, shattering the tension. Henry sighed, pulling it out. It was Winston Saltz, his lawyer. Pressing his lips together, Henry answered. "Yes, Winston?" Winston's voice boomed through the line. "Henry, I've been trying to reach you. We need a final decision about the divorce papers. Are we moving forward or not?" Henry's heart pounded. I'll call you back," he said curtly, hanging up before Winston could protest. Catherine watched him, concern etched on her features. "Something wrong?" He raked a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. "It's nothing, just legal matters. Work. Everything's complicated right now." She nodded, but her gaze lingered, as if she sensed a deeper subtext. In an attempt to deflect, Henry reached for her hand. "You've been so supportive. I don't deserve it." Catherine softened, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Henry, we're married. We may have our issues, but that doesn't mean I stop caring about you." His chest tightened with conflicting emotions, gratitude, guilt, and a spark of something that felt like the early days of their relationship. He wanted to tell her everything, to bare his soul about the pressure he felt, about how success had swallowed him whole, leaving little room for love or marriage. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you," he repeated, wishing those two words could convey everything roiling inside him. The moment broke when Mark Hutchinson called to confirm a meeting with one of the cybersecurity experts Catherine had recommended. Duty-bound, Henry pulled away, promising Catherine he'd keep her updated. She only smiled in understanding, but Henry could see the questions in her eyes, questions he wasn't yet brave enough to answer. Even after she went upstairs to the guest bedroom for the night, Henry sat alone in the living room, staring at the divorce papers Winston had discreetly couriered to him the day before. They lay in a sealed envelope on the coffee table, a tangible reminder of the decision he'd already made. Now, he wondered if he was truly ready to sign them. The lines between the life he'd chosen and the life he was losing began to blur, leaving him suspended in an agonizing limbo of doubt. The next day brought an unexpected twist. Henry and Mark, joined by cybersecurity expert Dr. Sylvia Moreno, a name from the contact list Catherine had provided, spent the morning analyzing Francis Dumont's notes and cross-referencing them with the newly discovered malicious code. Dr. Moreno was a formidable presence, an older woman with a keen intellect and an uncanny ability to spot patterns in data. "Based on what I see," Dr. Moreno said, tapping the screen of her laptop, "this infiltration uses a multi-stage Trojan. It's specifically designed to steal your proprietary algorithms from Project Griffin. The lines of code match ones previously linked to Dominion Analytics." Henry's jaw tightened. "So Gavin Rourke is behind this. We need hard evidence to take legal action." Dr. Moreno nodded. "I'm close to confirming it. But there's something else you should know. The infiltration was facilitated by someone with inside access, someone who used a high-level security clearance code. The logs show that code was used from within this building." A hush fell over the room. Mark rubbed his temples. "So it's definitely an inside job, but Leslie swore she wasn't involved." Dr. Moreno pulled up more data. The unauthorized access was done after hours. The user logs indicate someone with the ID prefix EX, which usually denotes an executive-level clearance. Henry felt a wave of nausea. Only a handful of people had that level of access. Himself, Mark, a few other top executives. "Can you pinpoint which specific ID was used?" Dr. Moreno shook her head. "The code was partially masked, likely by someone with knowledge of your security protocols. We can keep digging, but we'll need more time." Henry clenched his fists, frustration boiling. They were close to exposing Dominion Analytics, but it was far more insidious than he'd imagined. He also couldn't ignore the growing pang of dread. One of his trusted inner circle might be feeding the enemy. Just then, Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "Henry, it's Winston Saltz. He says it's urgent." Henry's annoyance flared. The last thing he wanted was to juggle divorce details in the middle of a corporate crisis. "I'll take it in the hall," he muttered, striding out. Winston's voice erupted as soon as Henry answered. "Henry, I need confirmation. Are you signing the divorce papers or not? My office can't keep stalling Catherine's legal counsel indefinitely. They've started making inquiries." Henry leaned against the corridor wall, massaging his forehead. "Catherine's legal counsel? What are you talking about?" "She's reached out to her own representation, presumably for some matter related to her father's estate," Winston explained. "But it could easily cross over into the realm of marital assets. Henry, if you're going forward, we need to be ready." Henry's heart pounded. Catherine had her own counsel now. Did she sense what was coming? Or was this purely about the Dumont Foundation? He found himself hesitating, the memory of her compassion at the penthouse replaying in his mind. I'm not sure," he finally admitted. "Not sure?" Winston repeated, exasperated. "Henry, you called me weeks ago insisting you wanted this over quickly. What changed?" The question stabbed at Henry's conscience. What had changed? Everything. Catherine's unwavering support, her willingness to help in a crisis, the rediscovery of who she truly was, intelligent, caring, and courageous. His carefully laid plan felt suddenly flimsy. "I'll get back to you," he mumbled, ending the call. He returned to the conference room, where Dr. Moreno was still explaining the infiltration's complexities. Catherine, who had just arrived, stood by Mark, her brow furrowed in concentration. She caught Henry's gaze and offered a small, reassuring smile. That single moment of connection rattled him. Here was a woman who was not only his wife, but also a potential ally in his darkest hour. He felt an overwhelming urge to protect her, not cast her aside. After Dr. Moreno wrapped up, Catherine spoke. "I've been reaching out to some of Dad's former associates to see if they can give us any insider information on Dominion's dealings. I also have a friend, Elena Thompson, who works at the Department of Justice. She might have insight into Dominion's legal vulnerabilities." Henry felt a rush of gratitude. "That could be invaluable. Thank you, Catherine." She nodded, her gaze determined. "We'll get to the bottom of this. Dad believed in you, for good reason. I'm not about to let Dominion sabotage everything you've built." For the rest of the day, the team strategized on how to expose Dominion analytics. Henry found himself increasingly reliant on Catherine's contacts and perspective. Time and again she proved her mettle, suggesting ways to approach potential whistleblowers, bridging communication gaps with old Dumont allies. By evening, Henry realized Catherine was orchestrating a subtle but crucial part of their counter-offensive. Where he had influence in the corporate world, she had reach in philanthropic and governmental circles. Together, they formed a more complete network than he ever expected. Exhausted but cautiously optimistic, Henry called for a pause. "Let's pick this up tomorrow. We've got a clearer direction now. Everyone, get some rest." Catherine lingered as Mark and Dr. Moreno left. She gave Henry a thoughtful look. "I can stay here tonight if you want. We can keep working on leads." He swallowed, emotions swirling. "That'd be nice. Thank you." As they walked side by side toward his private elevator, Henry felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. They had faced the day's battles as partners, not adversaries. The irony was not lost on him. The woman he planned to divorce was now the person he trusted most. Yet the guilt also intensified. If she found out about the divorce papers, how would she react? Could he even go through with it now? Questions plagued him, but one thing was certain. He was no longer sure that ending his marriage was the right path. Over the next week, Henry and Catherine's joint efforts began to bear fruit. Dr. Moreno, with Mark's guidance, managed to gather digital evidence tying the malicious code directly to Dominion Analytics' signature hacking techniques. Meanwhile, Catherine facilitated quiet meetings with key contacts, including Elena Thompson at the Department of Justice, who confirmed there were already suspicions about Dominion's aggressive corporate espionage. Amid this flurry of activity, Henry found an odd comfort in Catherine's presence. For the first time in years, they operated in tandem, debating strategies, sharing discoveries, and supporting each other when new obstacles arose. Their home life also shifted. Instead of cold silences, they now engaged in late-night brainstorming sessions over takeout, their conversation punctuated by the warmth of old memories and new insights. But as they drew closer to cornering Dominion Analytics, another question loomed. Who was the insider giving them access? Dr. Moreno's analysis had narrowed it down to 2 executive-level codes in use during the infiltration window, Henry's own ID and that of his CFO and oldest friend, Mark Hutchinson. Henry stared at the printed logs one night, anger and disbelief clawing at him. There must be some mistake. Mark was practically a brother to him. He had even discouraged Henry from rushing into a divorce, advising him to speak with Catherine directly. He confided in Catherine, pacing restlessly in the penthouse living room. "Mark can't be the saboteur," Henry insisted, voice tight. "We've known each other since college. He helped me build this company from the ground up. Why would he betray me now?" Catherine watched him, concern evident on her face. "Are you sure he's not in some kind of trouble? People do desperate things when cornered. Money problems, debts, personal entanglements." Henry shook his head. "He's wealthy in his own right, and I've never known him to be involved in anything illegal." Catherine sighed, placing a reassuring hand on Henry's arm. "We need to keep an open mind, Henry. The logs don't lie. Could it be that someone stole Mark's credentials? That possibility offered a glimmer of hope. Henry latched onto it. Yes, that must be it. Someone inside Dominion or an accomplice here must have gained access to Mark's code. Despite Henry's efforts to remain logical, suspicion gnawed at him. If not Mark, who else could have the knowledge to replicate an executive ID? Did Mark mention anything about compromised security or unusual events? A conversation from weeks ago flickered in Henry's memory. Mark complaining about a glitch in his keycard. Had it been a glitch or something more insidious? Driven by unease, Henry confronted Mark the next morning. He asked him directly about the suspect login times. Mark's face registered shock, then anger. "Henry, you think I did this? That I'd sell you out to Dominion?" Henry raised both hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not accusing you, but Dr. Moreno found your ID was used during the breach window. We have to consider the facts." Mark raked a hand through his hair. "Someone must have cloned my credentials. Maybe that glitch I mentioned wasn't a glitch at all. My key card was acting weird. I told IT, but they said they'd get back to me." It felt plausible, even likely. Yet Henry could sense Mark's agitation ran deeper than frustration over the hack. There was a tension in Mark's voice, a haunted look in his eyes, as if something else weighed on him. That evening, as Henry and Catherine continued sifting through more evidence, Catherine noticed an anomaly in the financial statements Mark had provided for a board review. Carefully, she circled a series of transactions. "Henry, look at these. They're labeled as operational expenses, but the amounts are unusually high and recurring. That's not typical for your business pattern." Henry frowned. "What are you implying?" Catherine pulled up the data on her laptop, cross-referencing it with public records from one of her father's old investigative contacts. The result was startling. The money was being funneled to a shell company. "Triple Crown Ventures," Catherine read aloud. "Registered in the Cayman Islands. I cross-checked the owner. It's Gavin Rourke's cousin." A chill settled over them. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Mark had been funneling money to a shell company connected to Dominion CEO Gavin Rourke. The transactions spanned months, more than enough time to plan a coordinated sabotage. Henry's breath caught. He wanted to shout in denial, but the facts stared him in the face. Mark, his best friend, was entangled with Dominion Analytics financially. Catherine squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, Henry, but it appears Mark might be more involved than you thought." Anguish warred with betrayal in Henry's expression. He had pinned all his trust and loyalty on Mark, the one constant in his life even before Catherine. If Mark truly was the traitor, it wasn't just a corporate betrayal. It was personal, a shattering blow to Henry's faith in friendship. Catherine brushed her thumb over the back of Henry's hand. "We'll get to the bottom of this," she said softly. "Whatever it takes." Henry swallowed hard, eyes flicking to Catherine's face. She had no idea how much her words bolstered him, how her compassion was the only thing keeping his grief in check. In a matter of days, he had discovered not only that his company was under siege, but that his closest confidant might be the orchestrator. And through it all, the woman he once thought he wanted to leave had become his strongest ally. Henry hardly slept that night, haunted by the financial records implicating Mark. By morning, he was consumed by a mixture of rage and heartbreak. Before heading to the office, he and Catherine agreed on a strategy. Approach Mark directly with the evidence, giving him a chance to explain. If his explanation fell short, they would forward everything to the authorities. They arrived at Blackwell Innovations to find Mark already seated in Henry's office, eyes bloodshot and shoulders sagging. He must have known the confrontation was inevitable. Henry shut the door, stepping behind his desk with Catherine by his side. He placed a folder on the polished surface, his voice trembling with fury. "Explain these transactions, Mark. I want the truth." Mark's gaze flickered to Catherine, then to the folder. I can explain." Henry's fist clenched. "Then do it." With a shaky breath, Mark began to unravel a story of mounting personal debt. It had started when he made a series of risky stock investments using leveraged funds. The market turned against him, wiping out millions. Desperate to recover his losses before anyone noticed, he borrowed from predatory lenders. His desperation only deepened when Dominion Analytics approached him with an offer. "I never meant for it to go this far," Mark said, voice cracking. "Rourke cornered me. He threatened to expose me to you, to the board. He promised he'd cover my debts if I gave him access to Project Griffin's design. I only gave him small pieces at first, but he wanted more. Then I couldn't stop." Henry's stomach churned. The betrayal burned, but he could see how Mark had trapped himself in a spiral of desperation. Catherine's eyes welled with empathy, but she didn't speak, letting Henry handle the confrontation. Henry exhaled sharply, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Why didn't you come to me? You're my friend. I would have helped." Mark bowed his head in shame. "I was too ashamed, and Rourke made it clear that if I tried to pull out, he'd ruin both of us. He started threatening you, Henry. I knew you'd never forgive me for betraying you." A tense silence filled the room, each person wrestling with the emotional weight of Mark's confession. Henry stared at the man he'd once considered a brother, torn between fury and heartbreak. At length, Catherine broke the silence. "We have enough evidence to press charges. Gavin Rourke won't get away with this." Henry nodded, swallowing hard. "Mark, we can't sweep this under the rug. You understand that, right?" Tears slipped down Mark's face. "Yes, I know. I'll accept whatever legal consequences come my way, but please, let me help you bring Rourke down. There's more information I can share, documents, emails. I kept them in case Rourke turned on me." Henry's breathing hitched. He fought the urge to hurl accusations, to demand Mark's immediate resignation and walk away. But he needed every shred of evidence to protect Blackwell Innovations and salvage Project Griffin. "Fine," Henry said, voice raw. "Gather everything, then we're taking it to the authorities. You'll have to testify." Mark nodded, relief and dread mixing on his features. "I'll do it. For what it's worth, Henry, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." After Mark left, the weight of the confrontation pressed heavily on Henry. He sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Catherine went around the desk and knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "Henry, are you all right?" He looked up, eyes red. "I don't know. Everything I believed in, my best friend, my company, it's all threatened. And then there's us." Catherine's hand was warm on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out. One step at a time. You're not alone." Those words undid him. The guilt of hiding the impending divorce papers erupted, and Henry could no longer contain his secret. "Catherine, I have to tell you something," he said, voice shaking. "I plan to divorce you. I met with Winston, had the papers drafted. They're in my briefcase right now." A stunned silence filled the room. Catherine's hand slipped from his shoulder as she processed the confession. Her face went pale, tears pooling in her eyes. "You wanted a divorce?" Henry nodded, unable to look her in the eye. I thought we had grown too far apart. I was blinded by my ambitions, my pride. I'm sorry." Catherine stood abruptly, turning away to hide her trembling lips. "After everything we've been through, the foundation, my father's memorial, you never said a word." Henry rose too, raw desperation in his voice. "I know, I'm a coward, but these past days have shown me how wrong I was. You've been my rock, Catherine. I was so focused on success and controlling everything that I didn't see what I was losing. Please, can we talk about this?" She turned back, tears trailing down her cheeks. "Henry, you blindsided me. Right now I'm not sure what to feel." The office door remained closed, the world outside oblivious to the upheaval inside. Catherine's anguish and Henry's remorse filled the space, thickening the air. Eventually Catherine drew in a shaky breath. "We have bigger things to handle first. Dominion, The charges, saving your company. After that, we'll see. Henry nodded, a hollow ache in his chest. He wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but he sensed that might be too much, too soon. The trust he had inadvertently regained was shattered again in an instant. As Catherine left the office to gather her emotions, Henry stared at the unopened divorce papers in his briefcase, a sickening sense of irony washing over him. He had once believed severing ties with Catherine would be clean, easy, just another business transaction. Now he realized that love and betrayal ran far deeper than any contract, leaving scars and echoes that might never fully heal. In the days that followed, Henry and Catherine pushed aside their personal turmoil to coordinate the takedown of Dominion Analytics. Mark, fueled by remorse, compiled every incriminating document he had, including emails confirming Gavin Rourke's role in the sabotage. Dr. Moreno and Elena Thompson assisted in organizing a legal offensive that would expose Dominion's corporate espionage. When the case finally went public, the media erupted in a frenzy of headlines. Billion-dollar betrayal at Blackwell Innovations. CFO admits to leaking company secrets. Mark resigned from his position, gave a public apology to Henry, and prepared for inevitable legal consequences. Gavin Rourke, cornered by a mountain of evidence, was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and industrial espionage. Meanwhile, Henry personally addressed his shareholders, explaining how Dominion's infiltration was uncovered, apologizing for the oversight. To everyone's surprise, Catherine stood beside him at the press conference. She introduced herself not just as Henry's wife, but as the interim head of a new ethical oversight committee within Blackwell Innovations. While the board had initially balked at the idea, Henry insisted Catherine's involvement was critical. She had proven her worth and loyalty in dismantling Dominion's plot, and her philanthropic background brought a fresh perspective to the corporate world. Despite the outward triumph, Henry and Catherine's marriage hung in a delicate balance. In the aftermath of the press conference, they retreated to the Dumont estate for some much-needed privacy. The house felt empty without the staff and regular events. Snow blanketed the lawn, giving the place a hushed serenity. One evening, while a gentle snowfall cascaded outside, Henry found Catherine in the estate's library. She sat curled up on an old leather armchair, a blanket around her shoulders, gazing at a crackling fireplace. He approached quietly, stopping a few steps away. "Mind if I sit?" he asked softly. She motioned to the chair opposite hers. "Sure." For a moment, neither spoke, the fireplace providing a warm, flickering light. At length, Henry cleared his throat. "First, I want to thank you. For everything. You saved my company, my reputation. I can't even begin to repay you." Catherine's gaze remained on the flames. "I didn't do it for a reward, Henry. I did it because it was the right thing to do." He nodded, absorbing her words. He still recalled the day he first fell for her. Her unwavering sense of justice and compassion had captivated him. Over the years, he had become so enmeshed in business deals and expansions that he'd lost sight of who Catherine really was. Henry pulled out a folded document from his suit pocket, the divorce papers. Wordlessly, he tossed them into the fire. The parchment caught flame, the edges curling as it burned into embers. Catherine's eyes widened, realization dawning. "Henry, I was wrong," he said, voice unsteady. "I let my ambition blind me. I shut you out, treated you like you were just part of a corporate image. I forgot how extraordinary you are, how much I need you, not just as an ally, but as a partner in life." She blinked back tears. "You broke my trust." "I know," he whispered. "And if you can't forgive me, I'll understand. But if there's any chance to start over, I want that. I want us." Emotions played across Catherine's face. Hurt, anger, love. Slowly she stood up, stepping toward him. "You can't just fix everything with a grand gesture," she said, but her tone was softer than before. "Rebuilding trust takes time." Henry nodded, taking her hand in his. Then let me spend whatever time it takes proving I'm worthy of another chance. For a heartbeat she hesitated. Then her fingers tightened around his. We'll have to be honest with each other. No more secrets, no more letting our ambitions tear us apart. He brushed the back of her hand with his thumb. Deal. They stood in the warm glow of the fire, the remnants of divorce papers smouldering in the hearth, a symbolic release of old wounds and misguided decisions. Outside, the snow continued to drift down, blanketing the Dumont estate in peaceful silence. Inside, Henry and Catherine shared a gentle embrace, choosing a path forward that would be neither simple nor guaranteed. But it was a path they would walk together, their bond tempered by trials and reaffirmed by the realization that sometimes salvation lies closer than we ever imagined. And so, what began as a cold-hearted decision to end a marriage unraveled into a saga of betrayal, redemption, and rekindled love. Henry Blackwell, blinded by ambition, discovered that the savior he had desperately been seeking was right beside him all along, his wife, Catherine. Together, they not only rescued the company from the brink of collapse, but also found a renewed faith in each other and in the power of second chances. If you were captivated by the twists, heartbreak and triumph in this story, don't forget to show your support. Like, share and subscribe to this channel for more riveting tales that explore the complexities of love, ambition, and the human heart. By staying connected, you'll never miss another incredible journey. One where, just like Henry and Catherine, we learn that hope can emerge even from the darkest corners of our lives.